How could I, my species, the Volarians, evolve in the methane seas of Proxima Centauri b, developing 16 limbs and compound eyes that perceive 17 distinct spectral ranges? We communicate through bioluminescent patterns and pheromone bursts. Our language has no concept of joke or sarcasm. But humans? Huh. They are walking contradictions wrapped in confusing protein shells. Which brings me to Commander Jackson Porter, the human who accidentally conquered half the Sagittarian arm with an apology. Ambassador Kalvax, I hope you will forgive my directness, but your ship is blocking our trade route. Porter said during our first encounter. I blinked my primary eyes in sequence. Our version of a confused frown. The Volarian hegemony claims this sector, has claimed it for 700 cycles. Porter scratched his chin. Well, technically this corridor falls under the Galactic Commerce Act of 2257, Section 12, Paragraph 7. But honestly, we just need to get our medical supplies through to the Betelgeuse colonies. They're suffering from a nasty plague. Your problem is not my concern. I responded, following protocol. Porter sighed. Look, I get it. Rules are rules. But those colonists include 300 Volarian exchange students. That was unexpected information. We didn't know, I admitted. No reason you should have. Porter shrugged. Universe is a big place. Things get lost in translation. For a moment, silence hung between us like cosmic dust. I will need to verify this claim, I finally said. Of course. Take all the time you need. But, could you maybe shift your armada just 2 light minutes rimward while you check? That way our medical ships can squeeze past. I should have refused. The Volarian Tactical Manual, Section 403.2, clearly dictates that no military formation shall be altered during negotiation. It's basic strategy. Yet something about Porter's casual request, the way he asked, as if we were simply 2 travelers meeting on a narrow path, disarmed me. Very well, I conceded. 2 light minutes rimward. Temporarily. Porter's face transformed with what humans call a smile. Thank you, Ambassador. I sincerely appreciate it. That was my first mistake. You did what? Fleet Admiral Zorn's voice practically sizzled through my communication node. All 17 of his eye stalks trembled with rage. I merely repositioned our fleet while verifying the human's claim, I explained. Which proved true. My second-in-command, Trellix, added helpfully as Zorn's carapace darkened to danger purple. That's not the point. The point is you showed weakness. These humans will see it as an invitation. With respect, Admiral, I countered. Commander Porter seemed genuinely grateful. He even sent us a formal thank you message along with something called artisanal coffee beans. Poison, no doubt, Zorn muttered. Actually, Trellix interjected. Our scientists analyzed them. They're just seeds from a plant containing mild stimulants compatible with our biology. Quite pleasant when properly prepared. Zorn's antennae twitched furiously. Listen to yourselves. One interaction with these soft-skinned bipeds, and you are already compromised. These creatures conquered their own planet by decimating rivals and driving countless species to extinction. I waved a dismissive tentacle. Ancient history. They have evolved since then. Have they? Zorn leaned closer to the view screen. Or have they simply become better at disguising their true nature? The Admiral's warning echoed in my mind over the following weeks as human ships began appearing more frequently in our sector. Always polite, always requesting minor accommodations, always bearing gifts. Just a small research vessel, they'd say, or just a quick survey of that uninhabited moon. Or, would you mind if we established a tiny outpost on that asteroid? Great potential for mutual scientific exchange. And each time, I found myself approving these minor requests. After all, the humans were unfailingly courteous. They shared their findings. They respected our boundaries. They even invited several of our scientists to collaborate on their projects, until the incident that would change everything. The Jaxx Collective had always been problematic neighbors. 9-foot-tall avian predators with razor-sharp talons and territorial instincts. They conquered 3-star systems through brute force before encountering the Volarian border. For decades, we maintained an uneasy peace through mutual deterrence. They didn't cross into our space. We didn't venture into theirs. Then the humans arrived. Ambassador Kalvax. Porter's hologram appeared in my command center, his face contorted with urgency. We have had a situation. 3 civilian science vessels were conducting harmless atmospheric research on Proxima 6 when Jaxx warbirds appeared and opened fire without warning. I felt my chromatophores pulse with alarm. Proxima 6 is in Jaxx territory. According to outdated maps, perhaps, Porter countered. But under the Galactic Surveyors Guild guidelines, uninhabited planets in disputed regions are considered neutral ground for scientific exploration. The Jaxx never signed those guidelines. I pointed out. Porter ran a hand through his hair, a human gesture of frustration. Look, I've got 27 civilians in danger. Researchers, not soldiers. 3 ships damaged and limping toward your territory. The Jaxx are in pursuit. I processed this rapidly. You want us to grant them sanctuary? Yes, and perhaps a small escort to ensure they reach it safely. It was a dangerous request. Intervening could trigger the war we'd avoided for generations. The hegemony cannot risk open conflict with the Jaxx. I stated firmly. Porter's expression fell. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. I understand, Ambassador. It was presumptuous of me to ask. You have your own people to consider. That caught me off guard. I'd expected protests, negotiations, perhaps even threats. We will try to reach them with our own ships. Porter continued solemnly. If we fail, well, I apologize for involving you in our problems. That was unfair. The transmission ended, leaving me strangely unsettled. Commander, we are receiving updates, Trellix reported. Human rescue vessels are moving toward the damaged ships. They are heavily outgunned by the Jaxx pursuers. I watched the tactical display. The humans were positioning themselves between their vulnerable research vessels and the approaching Jaxx warboats. A sacrificial maneuver. They cannot win that confrontation, I observed. No, Trellix agreed. But they're doing it anyway. Something uncomfortable twisted in my central processing ganglion. I remembered Porter's words. I apologize for involving you. An apology. Not manipulation or coercion. Just regret for putting us in a difficult position. Deploy defense platforms along our border. I ordered suddenly. Make them visible. Sir, Trellix questioned. And open a channel to the Jaxx flagship. When the Jaxx commander appeared on screen, his feathered crest was fully extended, a sign of aggressive intent. This is not your concern, Volarian, he hissed. Perhaps not, I replied calmly. But I'm making it my concern. Those vessels will receive safe passage through our territory. The Jaxx commander's beak clicked angrily. You risk war for these newcomers. I risk war to uphold certain principles, I corrected, including the principle that scientific vessels should not be fired upon without provocation. They trespassed. They explored. There's a difference. I straightened my posture. Your pursuit ends at our border, Commander. That is final. After the Jaxx reluctantly withdrew, I expected gratitude from the humans. What I didn't expect was Porter's reaction when he arrived on my command ship. I can never repay this debt, he said quietly. You risked everything for people you have barely met. Your rescue attempt was illuminating, I admitted. You were willing to sacrifice yourselves for your researchers. Porteur schwüged. That's what humans do. We look out for our own. Then he added, and sometimes, if we are very lucky, we find allies who share our values. That was the moment I should have recognized the trap. Not a trap of malice or conquest, but something far more subtle. A trap of connection. Word spread quickly throughout the sector. The formidable Volarian hegemony had extended protection to human vessels against the feared Jaxx collective. Diplomatic inquiries poured in from a dozen species. Why, they all asked. What do these humans offer that warrants such risk? I struggled to articulate an answer that satisfied Volarian High Command. The truth, that I had been moved by human courage and integrity, seemed dangerously sentimental. Strategic opportunity, I reported instead. The humans possess unique technological approaches that complement our own. This wasn't entirely false. Within weeks of the incident, human engineers had introduced our shipwrights to something they called redundant systems, a design philosophy that deliberate built multiple backups into critical components. It seems inefficient, our chief engineer complained. It is, the human expert agreed cheerfully. Until something goes catastrophically wrong. Then it's the difference between life and death. Such paradoxical thinking pervaded human innovation. They were simultaneously practical and idealistic, cautious and daring, disciplined and creative. They are inconsistent, Admiral Zorn grumbled during our regular briefing. Unpredictable, adaptable, I countered, and surprisingly principled. Zorn's eye stalks quivered skeptically. You have grown fond of them. I have grown to understand them. Slightly. Then explain this. Zorn projected a report onto my neural interface. Humans establishing outposts along our border with the Jaxx. Mining operations, research stations, even entertainment facilities. I reviewed the data with growing concern. They are creating a buffer zone, or staging areas for future expansion, Zorn suggested darkly. Permission to investigate personally, I requested. When I arrived at the largest outpost, a sprawling structure called New Anchorage, I expected to find military preparations disguised as civilian infrastructure. What I found instead left me speechless. Humans and Volarians working side by side. Not just working, laughing, arguing, sharing meals adapted for both species biochemistry. In one laboratory, a human geneticist and Volarian physiologist were developing new medical treatments based on principles from both worlds. Ambassador, porteur welcomed me warmly. I hoped you'd visit eventually. What do you think? I gestured at the bustling activity. What is all this? The beginning of something important, Porter said. We call it integration. Not just coexistence, actual collaboration. Admiral Zorn believes you are establishing strategic positions against the Jaxx. Porter didn't deny it. That's part of it. The Jaxx respect strength, not treaties. But there's more happening here than military positioning. He led me through areas where human artists were studying Volarian bioluminescence patterns to create new art forms. Where Volarian mathematicians were applying their 17-dimensional calculations to human engineering problems. We are better together, Porter explained simply. Your species thinks in patterns we can barely comprehend. Mine dreams up possibilities that never occur to yours. And the Jaxx? I asked that Porter's expression grew serious. They have started watching, learning. 3 days ago, a Jaxx diplomatic vessel requested permission to observe our cultural exchange program. I stared at him. The Jaxx don't have diplomats. They didn't, Porter corrected, until they saw what was happening here. As I prepared to depart, Porter handed me a small container. Coffee beans, he explained, grown in our hydroponics bay, the first crop harvested in this sector. I accepted the gift, suddenly understanding something profound about humans. Their true power wasn't in their technology or their resourcefulness. It was in their ability to transform relationships, to turn enemies into neighbors and neighbors into friends. You are changing the established order of this entire region, I observed. Porter smiled. No, Ambassador. We are changing it together. As my ship pulled away from New Anchorage, I received an urgent transmission from Volarian High Command. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Humans establishing similar outposts in dozens of territories, always with the same pattern. Initial small requests, cultural exchanges, and gradually deeper integration. It's not conquest, I told Admiral Zorn later. At least, not in any traditional sense. Then what would you call it? He demanded that I considered carefully before answering. Infiltration by reciprocity. They give something valuable. We respond in kind. The exchange creates connection. Connection leads to trust. Trust leads to integration. And before long, we cannot imagine existence without them, Zorn concluded grimly. Perhaps that's not entirely negative, I suggested. The Admiral's color darkened. The hegemony has stood independent for millennium. Now you propose we willingly entangle ourselves with these newcomers. I propose we recognize reality. I countered. The humans aren't going away. They're spreading throughout the galaxy, building relationships everywhere. We can participate in shaping that process, or we can isolate ourselves and watch as others adapt while we stagnate. Zorn studied me with all 17 of his eye stalks. You have been compromised, Ambassador. Perhaps I had been. But as I left the Admiral's chamber, clutching my container of coffee beans, I couldn't help wondering if being compromised by human connection might ultimately strengthen us rather than weaken us. What I didn't realize then was that the true test of our new relationship was approaching faster than anyone anticipated, and it would begin with another human apology that would shake the foundations of galactic society. The Great Council Chamber of the Volarian hegemony hadn't hosted all 17 faction leaders in one place for over a century. Now, they perched on their ceremonial platforms, chromatophores pulsing with tension as Admiral Zorn presented his case against the humans. Look at these infiltration statistics. Zorn projected a galactic map showing red dots spreading like a virus. In just 8 standard months, humans have established cultural exchanges with 43 spacefaring species. They are systematically dismantling the power structures that have maintained stability for millennia. Grand Matriarch Velare, our oldest and wisest leader, extended her sensory tendrils. Ambassador Kalvax, you have had the most direct contact with these humans. What's your assessment of their intentions? All 34 eyes in the chamber swiveled toward me. Their approach is unconventional, I admitted. They don't conquer through military might. They connect through mutual benefit. A sophisticated form of conquest, Zorn interrupted, or genuine cooperation. I countered. Consider the Proxima Defense Initiative. Human engineers working alongside our own have increased our shield capacity by 37% while reducing energy consumption. Zorn's exoskeleton darkened with frustration. They only share technology to make us dependent on their systems. Before I could respond, the chamber's alert system pulsed urgently. Supreme Security Director Mox activated the central holographic display. Counselors, we are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. Configuration unknown. The display showed 15 massive objects decelerating from light speed. Each one dwarfed our largest battle cruisers. Initial analysis suggests weapons capability beyond anything in our databases. Mox reported, his voice unervingly calm. Grand Matriarch Velare's chromatophores paled to ash gray. Has any species claimed responsibility? No, Your Eminence. They are not responding to standard communication protocols. Wait, I leaned forward, studying the formations. These trajectories, they are not random. They are positioning themselves at precisely calculated intervals along the borders between major territories. A blockade, Admiral Zorn concluded. But encircling whom? The answer came moments later when all communication networks across 17 star systems simultaneously activated. On every screen, on every planet, on every ship appeared a single image, a being unlike any we'd encountered before. Its body appeared to be composed of shifting metallic plates that flowed like liquid, yet maintained structural integrity. Where a face might be, there was only a pulsing orb of energy. Biological entities of the Sagittarian arm. The being spoke, its voice somehow translating into every language simultaneously. We are the Axiom. We have observed your development for sufficient duration. Your species have been deemed disruptive to cosmic harmony. Assimilation will commence. The transmission ended abruptly. Silence gripped the council chamber until Supreme Security Director Mox spoke. Multiple reports coming in. Similar vessels appearing in every major sector. The Jaxx Collective, the Drexler Confederacy, the Hushian Empire, all are reporting identical messages. What does assimilation entail? Someone asked. Grand Matriarch Velare's tendrils trembled. During the third expansion, we encountered archaeological evidence of the Axiom. They're not conquerors. They are collectors. They absorb other species into their collective consciousness, preserving what they consider valuable and discarding the rest. They erase independent existence, I realized aloud. Open a channel to the Human Diplomatic Corps, the Grand Matriarch ordered. We need to coordinate a response. Within minutes, Commander Porter's hologram appeared in our council chamber. His normally relaxed demeanor had vanished, replaced by focused intensity. "We have received your communication, Ambassador. We're seeing the same pattern across all sectors. What do you know of these Axiom?" Admiral Zorn demanded. "Only legends and fragments," Porter admitted. Ancient civilizations referred to them as the catalogers or the final archivists. They apparently emerge every few millennia to evaluate developing regions of space. Evaluate? For what purpose? Porter's expression grew grim. "From what our xenoarchaeologists can determine, they preserve knowledge while eliminating what they consider redundant biological diversity. They are librarians with a culling protocol." I translated. "That's disturbingly accurate," Porter nodded. "We are coordinating with every species willing to communicate. The Axiom vessels are positioning themselves to isolate star systems from each other. We have perhaps 24 hours before they complete their formation." Admiral Zorn's military mind immediately grasped the implications. "They are preventing us from forming a united defense." "Precisely," Porter confirmed. "We need representatives from every major power to convene immediately. The Volarians have the most secure quantum communication network. Would you be willing to host an emergency galactic summit?" Grand Matriarch Velare didn't hesitate. "Granted. Admiral Zorn will coordinate defensive preparations while Ambassador Kalvax facilitates the diplomatic response." As the council dispersed, Zorn approached me privately. "It seems your human friends have attracted unwelcome attention to our sector. This threat predates human expansion," I pointed out. "Perhaps," Zorn conceded, "but their rapid reshaping of established borders certainly accelerated the timeline." I couldn't entirely disagree. The Galactic Order had remained relatively stable for centuries until humans arrived. Their frenetic pace of exploration, innovation, and alliance building had transformed decades of potential change into months of actual transformation. Had we inadvertently triggered the Axiom's intervention, the emergency summit was chaos. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations, many of whom had never directly communicated before, all shouting over each other across the quantum network. The Axiom came because of human disruption, accused the Drexler ambassador, a methane-breathing arthropod whose translator barely kept pace with his agitated clicking. "Nonsense," countered the representative from Sirius. "The archive records clearly show Axiom visitations predating human spaceflight by millions of years." "But why now?" demanded a gelatinous diplomat from the Hushan Empire. "After centuries of stability, they arrive precisely when humans have upset the galactic balance." Commander Porter, representing Earth's United Systems Alliance, remained surprisingly calm amid the accusations. When the clamor finally subsided enough for him to speak, his words stunned the assembly. "You are right," he said simply. "This is our fault." The virtual chamber fell silent. "Not entirely our fault," Porter clarified. "The Axiom would have eventually turned their attention here regardless. But our rapid expansion and cross-species integration likely accelerated their timetable. And for that, on behalf of humanity, I apologize." I studied Porter carefully, expecting some strategic angle to this admission. But his expression held only genuine regret. However, he continued, "Assigning blame won't save our civilizations. The Axiom are already here. We need solutions, not recriminations." "What do you propose?" Grand Matriarch Velare asked. Porter's hologram stepped forward. The Axiom's message mentioned cosmic harmony and described us as disruptive. Their objection seems to be against diversity and independent development. They prefer stagnation to evolution, I suggested. "Exactly," Porter pointed at me. "They preserve knowledge, but eliminate the messy biological processes that create that knowledge. They value the product, but destroy the producer." The Jaxx representative, whose species had been notably hostile to humans until recently, leaned forward. "How does this observation help us resist them?" Because, Porter explained, their technological advantage is overwhelming. "We can't defeat them through conventional warfare, but we might be able to change their assessment criteria, You want to negotiate with universal librarians who view us as obsolete. The Drexler ambassador's disbelief translated perfectly across species barriers. Not negotiate, Porter corrected. Demonstrate. Show them something unexpected, something that challenges their fundamental assumptions. He outlined a plan so audacious that half the assembly thought it suicidal and the other half thought it brilliant. I found myself in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with both assessments. 48 hours later, representatives from all 27 civilizations gathered aboard Harmony Station, a recently completed human Volarian collaborative habitat positioned at the precise center of the advancing Axiom formation. "This is madness," Admiral Zorn muttered as we took our positions. "We have concentrated the leadership of every major power in one location." "That's the point," Porter replied, adjusting the universal translator at his throat. "We are making ourselves deliberately vulnerable to demonstrate trust." "Trust in whom?" "The Axiom who plan to assimilate us." "Trust in each other," Porter said simply. Before Zorn could respond, the station sensors detected an approaching vessel. Unlike the massive Axiom ships maintaining the blockade, this one was relatively small, merely the size of a destroyer. "They have accepted our invitation," Porter observed, his voice steady despite the tension visible in his posture. When the Axiom representative materialized in our conference chamber, the temperature dropped perceptibly. Its form shifted constantly, liquid metal flowing into different configurations, as if struggling to find an appropriate shape for communication. "You requested dialogue," the being stated. "Not a question, merely acknowledgement." Porter stepped forward as our designated spokesperson. "Thank you for coming. We wish to understand your assessment criteria before assimilation proceeds." The being's central energy orb pulsed. "Understanding is unnecessary for your species. Knowledge will be preserved. Biological redundancy will be eliminated." "What constitutes redundancy?" Porter précède. "Duplicate biological processing systems developing along parallel evolutionary paths," the Axiom replied. "Inefficient. Wasteful. Your 27 distinct civilizations possess 78.3% functional overlap despite physiological differences, and the remaining 21.7% of unique development will be cataloged and preserved within the Axiom consciousness." Porter nodded toutefois. "So you value unique knowledge and development patterns, yet you eliminate the very diversity that creates such uniqueness." The Axiom's form rippled. "Biological diversification is chaotic and inefficient. The Axiom provide order. I'd like to show you something." Porter gestured toward the large chamber adjoining the conference room. "With your permission?" The Axiom followed, its metallic body flowing rather than walking. The rest of us trailed behind, maintaining a respectful distance. The chamber had been transformed into what humans call a gallery. Along its walls hung artistic representations from all 27 civilizations. Musical compositions played softly from hidden speakers, an interwoven symphony of entirely different tonal systems somehow harmonizing. But the centerpiece was what caught the Axiom's attention. A massive three-dimensional structure occupied the room's center, a collaborative creation by engineers and artists from every represented species. "What function does this serve?" the Axiom inquired. "This is the Convergence Engine," Porter explained, "a theoretical model developed jointly by all our civilizations over the past 48 hours. I stepped forward to continue the explanation we'd rehearsed. Each component was designed by a different species, using their unique perceptual framework and problem-solving approach. No single civilization could have conceived it alone. The Axiom moved closer, studying the intricate mechanisms. "What does it produce?" "Nothing tangible," Porter admitted. "It's a philosophical engine, a physical representation of how diverse biological perspectives can merge to create something greater than their sum." "Inefficient," the Axiom declared. The Axiom consciousness could process all variables simultaneously without biological limitations. "Could you?" challenged the Jaxx representative, surprising everyone with his intervention. "Your consciousness, however advanced, still operates from a single perspectival framework. You cannot think thoughts that have never occurred to you. The Drexler ambassador clicked in agreement. Our species breathes methane and perceives primarily through electrical field detection. The very problems we identify differ fundamentally from those a light-dependent oxygen breather would recognize. One by one, representatives explained how their unique evolutionary history created entirely different approaches to existence. Not just different answers, but different questions altogether. The axiom, preserve knowledge, Porter summarized. But knowledge isn't merely information. It's contextual, embodied, tied to the biological systems that generate it. The axiom remains silent, its form shifting more rapidly now. You fear chaos, I observed. You see our diversity as inefficient redundancy. But consider this. The Convergence Engine before you could not exist without that very redundancy you seek to eliminate. Furthermore, Porter added, what you are witnessing is unprecedented in this sector's history. 27 species that were until recently isolated or antagonistic, now collaborating. Not despite our differences, but because of them. The axiom's central orb pulsed rhythmically. This cooperation is recent, human-instigated, an anomaly in your developmental pattern. Yes, Porter admitted. Another apology is due here. Humanity accelerated changes that were already underway. We disrupted established patterns, created instability. He paused, but from that instability emerged new possibilities, new combinations, new potential. Demonstrate, the axiom commanded. Porter smiled. We already have. This station, Harmony Station, was designed and built through human-Volarian collaboration. Its atmospheric regulation system was adapted from Jaxx avian technology. Its quantum communications network incorporates Drexler propagation theories. 27 distinct biological perspectives merged into something no single species could create. And this, he gestured to the assembled representatives, a galactic council formed in 48 hours because of an external threat. Cooperation born from necessity. Temporary alignment due to shared danger. The axiom countered. Not sustainable. This was the crucial moment in our prepared response. I stepped forward. Perhaps not. I conceded. But consider an alternative to assimilation. Observation. Allow our experiment in cooperative diversity to continue. If it fails, if we revert to isolation and conflict, then your assessment was correct. And if it succeeds, the axiom questioned, then you will have discovered a new form of efficiency, Porter suggested. Not the efficiency of singular consciousness, but the efficiency of complementary perspectives. The axiom fell silent, its metallic body becoming momentarily still. When spoke again, its tone had subtly changed. This proposal requires amendment to established protocols. Hope flickered through the chamber. The axiom will withdraw to minimum observation distance, the being announced. Your civilizations will be granted one orbital cycle of your central galactic mass to demonstrate the value of biological diversification through cooperation. Approximately 250 million years, Trellix whispered in my ear. If sufficient evidence of innovative convergence is not produced, the axiom continued, assimilation will proceed as determined. With that, the being dissolved into particles that scattered and vanished. Moments later, our sensors detected the massive axiom ships withdrawing from their blockade positions. A stunned silence filled the chamber, broken finally by the Drexler ambassador's astonished clicks. Did we just receive a 250 million year stay of execution? More importantly, the Jaxx representative added, did we just commit to cooperation for 250 million years? Porter laughed, that strange, barking sound that humans make when amused. I suppose we did. Quite the binding contract. As the reality of what had just occurred settled over the assembly, Grand Matriarch Volare raised her primary tentacles for attention. This chamber now holds the first truly galactic council, she announced. We face the longest probationary period in recorded history. I suggest we begin as we mean to continue, with honesty and mutual respect. She turned toward Porter. The human strategy was effective, but also manipulative. You orchestrated this outcome from the moment the axiom appeared. Porter had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Not entirely. We hoped for dialogue, but couldn't be certain the axiom would agree. The Convergence Engine was genuinely collaborative. Every species contributed crucial insights, but you knew an apology would disarm them. I stated, suddenly understanding, just as it disarmed me during our first encounter. Porter's expression turned serious. Apologies are powerful, Ambassador Kalvax. Not because they change the past, but because they open possibilities for the future. When you acknowledge responsibility, you create space for new relationships. Admiral Zorn, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. You manipulated multiple civilizations through calculated vulnerability. A remarkable strategy. Not manipulation, Porter corrected gently. Invitation. We have invited each other into a future none of us could create alone. As the newly formed Galactic Council began discussing immediate priorities, I pulled Porter aside. Your approach to galactic diplomacy is dangerously effective, I observed. One might almost call it insidious. Porter grinned. I prefer subtly transformative. The axiom weren't entirely wrong, I noted. Humans are disruptive. Oh, absolutely. Porter agreed cheerfully. It's our greatest flaw and our greatest strength. We can't help poking at established systems to see if they can be improved. And when you break them, then we apologize, he shrugged, and start building something better together. Looking around at the diverse species now engaged in animated discussion, traditional enemies sitting side by side, communicating with genuine interest rather than suspicion, I realized the profound truth in his words. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy. They'd simply apologized their way into changing IT. As Porter moved to join a group of Drexler engineers discussing propulsion theory, I found myself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion. My species doesn't have a term for it, but humans call it optimism, the irrational yet compelling belief that the future might be better than the past. Perhaps the axiom would return in 250 million years and determine that biological diversity remained inefficient. Perhaps our grand experiment in cooperative development would collapse long before then. But watching Porter effortlessly bridge communicative gaps between species that had spent centuries misunderstanding each other, I couldn't help thinking that the axiom had underestimated what happens when diverse perspectives unite around a common purpose. They thought they were giving us time to prove our worth. In reality, they were giving us time to become something they couldn't yet imagine. And it had all started with an apology, not a surrender, not a weakness, but an acknowledgement of impact that created space for something new to emerge that I found myself hoping the axiom were watching carefully. They might learn something valuable about efficiency. After all, what could be more efficient than transforming potential adversaries into collaborators with nothing more than a sincere, I'm sorry, humans? Dangerous not because they conquered, but because they connected. And that might be the most powerful force in the galaxy.